All right, so in this lecture, we're going to talk about a really cool tool called gradient mapping, how you can use it in your painting. So here I have an example of an image that I've used gradient mapping on. Usually what you'll want to do is use gradient mapping and then sort of paint on top of it in order to kind of refine it, but this is just to show you how far you can get with just mapping alone. So what gradient mapping is you create a layer on top of a black and white image. I mean, it doesn't even have to be black and white, actually. It can be anything, but I typically like to use black and white, and it helps you colorize images a lot more quickly than doing it another way. So I have this black and white image here, and it's all my drawing layers. I have it grouped into one folder, but I'm going to make a new layer on top. And this layer we're going to make into a gradient map. So the way we do it is we're going to click on this little icon here. We're going to select gradient map. Oh, it looks like it just makes a new layer for us anyway, so we can just delete that one. So we have this gradient map here. Okay, and what it's going to do is if we click on the little gradient here on this layer, should bring up for us our gradient. And then we'll just click up here on the gradient under properties. And we can add this. So what it's going to do is, depending on what our colors are for our gradient, so let's say, for example, our colors are going to be a deep red, something like that, and our other color is going to be a light blue. So what this is doing is basically looking at our image and going through all the values and saying, okay, anything on the darkest end of our spectrum, we are going to make this dark red color, and anything on the lightest end of the spectrum is going to be this light blue color. And it's just going to fill in all the values in between on the scale. But the cool thing is we can start to add extra colors as well. So let's say for the mid-tone between red and blue, we want it to take a pit stop in the green area. And so we're going to put a nice sort of mid-tone green right about there. And it will now go between those two and sort of fills in. And you can add as many of these as you want. You do want to try and match the value so that you have different hue and saturation, but the value should be about where it would be when it's black and white so that you don't get crazy messed up sort of colors and stuff like that. Because if you invert it, it's gonna, your highlights will look dark, right? So you want to keep that in mind. And then if you slide these, it's going to change where on the value scale that color shows up and how soon it shows up. So if we slide these down, we'll get a little bit more white coming in a little sooner. Same with the blue, okay? And then you can just begin to add all these different variations in between. You can see how quickly it colorizes our image. We turn that on and off. Click OK up here. You can see the difference. And what you can do is you can make multiple gradient maps on top of each other, mask off certain areas, so you could do another one for the teeth, which that's what I did on this one here. I have a gradient map. If we open this up, you can see we have a gradient map for the horns, we have one for the eyes, one for the skin, and one for the background, and one for the teeth. And we're not going to do that whole thing right now, but that's your assignment, is to take this image and put some gradient maps on it to colorize it in a way that looks nice and appealing. Okay. If you don't have access to gradient maps in your software, then don't worry about it. You can still make awesome digital paintings without doing this. And I mean, honestly, most of the time this isn't a technique I use, but it's really good to be able to know how to do it in case you want to. And for some people, it might be something they really like and might be the way they want to start painting. So it's 100% up to you and your personal preference, but it's an option. One last thing I want to show you. We're going to go ahead and make another gradient map really quick. We'll turn this one off real quick as well and come up to this gradient map. If you click on your gradient again, there's also preset options up here that you can just click on, and it will automatically go through any of these with the preset. most of the time, you're probably not going to want to use these because, well, you'll get something like that, which tends to kind of look weird most of the time. But, I mean, totally up to you. Maybe you want to go for something like that. I like making my own. But who knows? I mean, that one's not terrible. That one's alright, I guess. That one's kind of interesting. It has sort of a inversion effect. Anyways, either way, whether you're using these or whether you're just going to do it yourself, you will want to make sure that once you do create your gradient map, that you're not just running with that, but that you're also coming in on top of this on a new layer and actually painting, you know, different things so that they don't just look like this sort of weird, kind of grainy, all sort of weird colored looking image, right? You still want to be able to have, you know, an image that you've painted and thought about the colors. This just gives you a good basis. It gets all your midtones, shadows, and highlights about where you want them. It gives you the opportunity to then come in here with a few other subtle color transitions and variations and lighten things up however you think would make them look good. You could also just use like a color layer and start to add color that way as well. And then that will sort of preserve your values underneath. And then you just pick the teeth, whatever you want to do. So anyways, there you go. Fun, interesting technique you can use. Once again, not totally required, just one of many options out there. That's one of the great things about digital painting is there's not necessarily a right or wrong way to digital paint. There's just sort of guidelines, and at the end of the day, whatever looks good is what is the right way to do it. So that was it for this lecture, and I will see you guys in the next one.